The first step is to download your pattern. Select your file according to your paper format and the size you wish to make. Print your pattern at 100% scale. There is a scale test included on the first page of your pattern to ensure you have printed correctly. Trim around the thin black border and use clear sticky tape to piece the pages together. There is a layout included in the instruction guide to help you lay out all the pages correctly. Trim around each individual pattern piece and lay the pattern onto the fabric. You can follow the cutting layout included in the instructions to make the most economical use of your fabric. Cut according to the individual instructions marked on each of the pieces. For this pattern, there is an optional petticoat. Make sure you cut to the correct length for the lining that is marked on your pattern. Also, the bow is optional for this style. Place the pattern piece for the middle front on top of the cut fabric piece. Using a light pencil or tailor's chalk, mark the point on the outer seam where the seam allowance meets at the neck edge. Make a small dot on the wrong side of the fabric. This point will be very important for the next few steps. Place the middle front piece on top of the centre front piece, matching up along the curved edge. Match the notches along the way to ensure the correct edges are together. Pin in place and then place the machine needle into the point where we have marked and stitch from that point to the hem using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Overlock and press the seam allowance close with the iron. Run off the overlocking stitching at the bust curve so that it does not interfere with the junction point we have just stitched. Repeat this for the other side. Place the side front piece on top of the middle front piece, matching up along the curved edge. Match the notches along the way to ensure the correct edges are together. Pin in place and stitch using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Overlock or zigzag this seam and then repeat for the other side. Match the centre back piece with the side back piece. Stitch together using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Overlock this seam and repeat for the other side so that you have a pair. Place the back pieces on top of the front pieces with the right sides touching one another. Match up along the shoulder seam and stitch together using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Press the seam open with the iron. There is no need to overlock this seam. Refer to the instruction guide for important notes on cutting the lining for this style. There are 2 lining options. Cut the lining to the shorter length if you are adding the tulle petticoat, and cut the lining to the longer length if you are not including the petticoat. Now, go back and repeat all of these steps for the lining pieces. Once that's done, pin the boning on the front and back bodice panel seams. The boning should begin 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch below the top edge and finish at the waist notch indicated on the pattern. You can see I've used 6 mm or 1/4 inch sew-in rigoline boning for this style. Using the sewing machine, top stitch the sew-in boning to the seam allowance of each of the panel seams. The bow is optional for this style, so if you're not including it, just skip the next following steps. Pin a pair of the bow pieces together with the right sides touching one another. Stitch around the outer edges using a 6 mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance, just leaving the short edge open. Turn the bow through to the right side and press sharply around the edges. Repeat these steps for the other set of bow pieces so that you have a pair. Using the longest stitch length on the sewing machine, stitch along the short edge. Pull on the threads to gather down the bow. Gather to be 6 cm or 2 3/8 of an inch to fit between the notches on the side seam of the side front piece. See the pattern for the placement of the bow. Pin the bow to the side seams on each side between the notches marked on the pattern. Stitch in place with the sewing machine to secure it. Then make sure you repeat for the other side. Place the lining pieces on top of the main piece with the right sides touching one another. Pin along the neckline and the armhole curves. Stitch together using a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Clip into the curves around the armholes and neckline. Take care not to snip into any of the stitching. Turn the garment through to the right side and press well along the armholes and neckline. You can see I'm pulling the back pieces through the front piece to make this step easier. Take time and care with this step as it is a little bit tedious. Open out the side seams and pin the main front pieces together from the hem all the way through to the lining edge. Stitch together using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Overlock the seam and repeat this for the other side seam. Press the side seams open and turn the garment back through to the right side. If you are creating the tulle petticoat, you can follow the next few steps. If not, hem the lining of the skirt now using a 6mm or 1/4 inch double or single turned hem. Pin the tulle together at the short side seams and stitch using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You will continue this so that you have one long strip of 4 pieces of tulle all sewn together to create one long band. Using the longest stitch setting, stitch along the top edge of the tulle piece. Don't back tack on either end. Pull on the threads to gather down the tulle. You'll need to gather the tulle piece small enough to fit onto the bottom edge of the lining hem. Pin the tulle to the bottom edge of the hem and stitch using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you have pinned so that the seam allowance will be hidden on the inside of the garment. This will ensure the scratchy seam allowance isn't sitting against the body. Overlock this seam. Overlock the centre back edges of the garment separately. You can see I'm catching all of the layers together, including the tulle. Open out the invisible zipper and pin each side of the zipper to the centre back edge. Stitch each side of the zipper down using the invisible zipper foot, keeping as close to the zipper teeth as possible. A 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance has been given to insert the zipper. Pin the seam allowance below the base of the zipper closed. The right sides of the garment should be touching. Stitch from the base of the zipper to the hem using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Turn down the top edge of the zipper tape and tuck it underneath the centre back seam allowance. Use a hand sewing needle to secure the zipper tape in place along the top edge. Overlock the hem edge. Fold the hem edge upwards by 6mm or 1/4 of an inch and press well. Top stitch all the way around the hem to neatly secure it. If you wish, you can repeat this step, turning up the hem and top stitching to create a double turned hem. I've just used a single turned hem for mine as my satin is quite heavyweight. All done!